love the smell of Winnipeg in November. Indeed we do. First and Now, the official Lions podcast is back. As always, Matt Baker alongside Nik Kowalski, broadcasting from the Go-Goat Sports Studio at the Wall Center on Burrard Street. Beautiful, little nipply day. We'll talk about the cold weather in Winnipeg at some point. But Nik, it's the Western Final. Lions, Blue Bombers, due respect to the Calgary Stampeders, very formidable foe on Sunday. Had a very good run this year, but the two best teams in the division, if not the Canadian Football League overall in 2022, are going to duke it out for a right to represent the West in Regina on November 20th. What's going on? Jacked up?
Yeah, that's an objective fact, too. It's 1-2 in record, so top two teams going at it, and it's the dream matchup. It's the Nathan Rourke versus Zach Collaros that we'll get into later on the show here. But yeah, a great win on Sunday. They got it done. They executed. That really was the difference in terms of the game, was the execution, I thought, on BC's side. And here we are, advancing to the Western Final.
Yes, back to the place we were just at 2 weeks ago. The circumstance is very different then. We're going to go through the regular season series in just a few moments' time. Winnipeg taking 2 of 3. The Lions, of course, got them in the middle meeting on October 15th, right after Winnipeg had wrapped up first, rested a couple guys, but the Lions were pretty depleted that week as well, so let's not overthink that aspect of it. Debate all you want. The Lions played a very good football game and won it, but Sunday was the scene. BC Place, 30-16. Both teams playing good defense early on. The Lions set the tone with a turnover on downs late in the first quarter, broke the ice, as Chris Cuthbert would say, with a Nathan Rourke touchdown pass to Alex Hollins. Boy, oh boy, Rourke, certainly not 100%, but looked pretty good in most phases of that game. The Lions, they put the gas down hard in the second quarter. Some brilliant execution on a third down call of their own. Ultimately was a turning point touchdown to Hatch. And really, I don't want to say it was without some dramatics, because early on there was a couple missed opportunities. There was a James Butler fumble. There was a couple moments in the second half where the offense stalled, but thankfully they made plays when they had to. Very impressive game, especially from the defense as well.
Big time, yeah, and it's been a defense that really maybe hasn't got its national credit that it really deserves, and they came in. I mean, all you heard about all week was the Calgary's run game, and that BC's run defense maybe is not up to the challenge, and I think they proved that they can handle the task that was ahead of them. And I know Calgary didn't run the ball that much either, but I think that's as we saw, we heard Coach Dickinson say after the game that they checked out her run plays because of how BC was lining up on defense. So that's something that the Lions obviously prepared for, Ryan Phillips' group. But they really came to play. Matthew Betts, again, with another massive game. I think we can go ahead and say the signing of the offseason in terms of free agents. It's right up there. He brought it again in the playoff game. Luches Purifoy, another free agent signing that really had a strong game. Whether it was breakups, he was involved in that other third down play that Calgary didn't get. And then Marcus Sales, I thought, had a great game too. A couple big breakups in that first drive and stuck with it throughout the remainder of the game. But the defense was very impressive. Calgary, they scored a touchdown for the first time a couple minutes ago in the game.
Garbage time. Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a little nerve-wracking. Bo Levi Mitchell comes in.
Yeah.
Their first drive of the fourth quarter. The score is 20-6 at one point. Makes a huge completion to, was it Malik Henry or Sindani, one of those guys down in the corner, sets them up down. I think it was Henry.
It was Henry over Gary Peters.
Inside the 5, it's okay, here we go. They score a touchdown here. There's still 6-7 minutes left. It's game on. And the defense buckles down again, forces them into the sack. There was a sack that came from Betts on the very next play, knocked them back into a 2nd and goal from the 17, I think it was.
And then Betts had a knockdown.
And then I was mildly surprised that Calgary didn't go for it, but they kicked the field goal to get to within 11. I guess that's the smart play. You're really banking on a quick stop and getting the ball back, and then if you score, you're almost into onside kick territory already. But that defense, boy, they gave up some yards. First couple of series they played, Calgary opens the scoring with a Paredes field goal after really kind of dinking and dunking their way down the field. Jake Mayer, that's a guy who, again, was pulled, and he took a little bit of criticism, as I saw in some of the post-game media comments, but they had a good game plan. The Lions just snuffed them out when it mattered most, talking about the 2 third down stops. But back to the Hatcher touchdown, and I was kind of on pins and needles at that point. It's a 7-point lead. It's near the end of the third quarter, and was standing next to Hillary Romans, our brand manager, and kind of turned to her and said, these third down situations, they scare me. They make me nervous. And she's like, yep. But sure enough, brilliant play call by Jordan Maksimic. It's Antonio Pipkin in there. He's about to get hit as he releases the ball. That's like a no-look pass that he lobs to Hatcher, and he scores. So just tell you what, if this proves to be a Grey Cup run and it ends the way we want it to end, you kind of look back at that play as a big catalyst in this whole mission here. Awesome day. And they executed there. That's what I was kind of getting at earlier in terms of a 20-yard pass on 3rd and 1 is a pretty risky play call, but Keon Hatcher and Antonio Pipkin executed it. A jet sweep on the 3rd and 1 is a pretty risky play call, but the Calgary Stampeders did not execute it. Woody Barron stuffed it out immediately. Then Sione Tuihema and the rest of the Lions defense stopped Henry short of that first down marker. So the execution was really a big factor in me. And then that other third down that Calgary went for, Jordan Williams gets untouched and gets right in Jake Mayer's face, forces an early throw when it's inaccurate, and Lucius Purifoy was there anyways. But that's another situation where the Lions executed when it really mattered and came down to it. That double move ball to Hollins, it's a play they were practicing. That we saw it. Yeah, at least I saw it during the week. And they went out and executed on the field. And then obviously the last touchdown too, Brian Burnham just doing his thing, vintage Burnham in terms of one-on-one jump ball, gotta have it, and Brian Burnham comes down with it. Yeah, you knew Brian Burnham was going to make his presence known, and he did, ultimately to seal it away in the fourth quarter. And Alex Hollins, great story. I mean, I know we love having Lucky Whitehead out there if he were available, but Alex Hollins has stepped in rather nicely after a solid showing in training camp and at various points in the regular season. So Lions and Bombers Sunday, we'll fly Friday. One of those, kind of one of those older style of road trips where you go 2 days early, you have a full day to walk through, do whatever you want. We're going to go to IG Field on Saturday afternoon, so it's going to feel real from a playoff perspective that way. 2 out of 3 for Winnipeg, like we were talking about in the regular season, and kind of do what we did last week, kind of rehashing what went down with Calgary before the Western semifinal. You remember, we'll start July 9th, week 5, I think it was. Lions were 3-0, Winnipeg was 4-0, and that game kind of had some interesting build-up. You had Marcus Sayles maybe putting the cart before the horse a little bit, talking about their offense and how they were exploitable and vanilla, I think was the term, and I know the Bombers had some fun with that in their post-game content. Full marks to them, though. So it was a first-place battle, 2 undefeated teams. It was a 4 o'clock kickoff on a beautiful summer day, roof open. The build-up to that one was really exciting. As far as regular season, that felt like the biggest regular season game in a very long time. And boy, oh boy, the win came out of the sails early with Janarian Grant taking the opening kickoff back. The Lions looking to respond with a touchdown of their own, but Jackson Jeffcoat drops into coverage, intercepts Nathan Rourke, and really, the Lions were behind the 8 ball early in that one, and it was a 43-22 win for the Bombers. Yeah, I was on record at the time, too, that was Zach Collaros' best game as a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. He was making his magic happen all night long, multiple rollout touchdowns where I thought really these entire 3 games against Winnipeg, the Lions' defensive front did a good job of pressuring Zach. Yep. But the problem is when you pressure Zach, oftentimes he gets out of that and makes a play happen. And that's exactly what he did in that game. There are multiple cases where Betts and Menard were winning off the edges, but then Collaros read the pressure, evaded it, and found Dalton Schoen in the end zone, found Greg Ellingson in the end zone. So Schoen had 8 catches, 117 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that game. Ellingson 7 for 97 and a touchdown in that game, and Greg Ellingson is also healthy for this Western Final Cup up on Sunday, so that's going to be obviously a key matchup to look for. But and then lastly, the other key point in that game was the turnovers, where BC 4, Winnipeg 0, and Winnipeg owned the ball for 39 minutes in that game. So yeah, so maybe looking back, hindsight being what it is, maybe that was a result that the Lions can look back on now as a good lesson, because after that took down Hamilton at home, and then started the run of winning twice in Saskatchewan, Went into Calgary and won those 2 crazy games after that. So the Lions, again, 8-1 when Nathan Rourke goes down. So I know it's cliche. It might seem like the easy answer, but maybe a little bit of an early season humbling like that was what this Lions team wanted. So fast forward now all the way to October 15th. Another exciting week buildup. We announced the gunmetal jerseys, and I know being around the guys and seeing their faces and seeing their reaction to wearing those jerseys, you just kind of felt something different was in the air. Now, the Blue Bombers the week before had locked up first place because we'd fallen in Toronto. Still don't know how the Lions lost that game in Toronto, but so there was an opportunity for first place being up for grabs. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Later that same night, as we're flying home, the Bombers just took it to the Edmonton Elks to wrap up first place. So no Zach Collaros on October 15th, but they still had not all hands on deck, but other than a couple of starting offensive linemen and maybe someone in the secondary, was it Sales or was it
Dietrich Nichols?
Dietrich Nichols, it was. Yeah, right. That was it. Dietrich Nichols. He didn't play, but really the Lions missing by the end of that game 7, 8, 9 starters, and it was the Terry Williams show. Special teams and field position willed the Lions to a 40-32 win. That was a big statement, whether or not it meant anything for the Bombers.
Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned, the turnovers were 4-0 for BC in that July 9 game, and on October 15th, the turnovers were 3-0 for Winnipeg. So BC got 3 takeaways. One of them went back for 6, or 2 of them went back for 6 actually. Yeah, 2 pick sixes by Marcus Sales and TJ Lee.
TJ, yep.
Yeah, so those are the difference maker plays in that game. James Butler also had over 100 yards on the ground, so he was a force right from the first drive. We also got the ball in the end zone. Dominique Grimes scored in that game as well too. We've seen Grimes score 3 touchdowns against the Bombers this year, all kind of in the same fashion too, where it's been a jump ball and he's came down with the ball, which he's been known to do pretty much this entire season. But that was if the July 9th game was a statement, I'm sure the Lions hope that the October 15th game was a statement right back at Winnipeg.
Yes, and I'll say this again. I watched Coach Mike O'Shea's post-game media availability. He was pissed. Some of the naysayers say, oh, Winnipeg didn't care about the game. Yeah, just listen to what their head coach said. He's like, yeah, we came here to win a football game, and we weren't good enough. I'm paraphrasing what he said. So, and again, if you want to play the depleted lineup game, yeah, we lost Josh Banks that night, I think.
Yeah, Emmanuel Rugamba went down for a bit.
So already factoring in no Brian Burnham, no Lucky Whitehead.
No Nathan Rourke.
Hey, you want to talk about depleted lineups? Anyway, that's football, though. Any football game has those elements to consider. So that put the Lions on the brink of wrapping up second place. They would do it the very next week in Edmonton. Once they defeated the Blue Bombers, it was only a matter of when, and when we knew would be in Edmonton, most likely, and it was. So I don't know how much time you want to rehash the last meeting. Just 2 weeks ago, IG Field, Zach Collaros did start, played the first quarter only, led 2 scoring drives. The big result, the big item, I should say, from a Lions perspective was Nathan Rourke officially returned, and that was amazing. That was a win right there, just to see him get a couple of series. I think he played 16 plays. Looked promising for him until the strip sack on the opening series of the game, and really, Collaros just kind of took over from there. The Bombers win it 24-9, but the result was a really Lions behind the 8 ball, 14-0 trailing in the first quarter. That was what it was. They got out unscathed. We saw that Rourke was able to go, and that had to be a win in itself. But still, a good statement by Winnipeg, maybe reminding people that, yep, it still comes through us here. So
yeah, 6 quarterbacks played in that game, so that kind of says it all.
Right.
But yeah, it was pretty. It got a little physical in that third quarter. That's one kind of takeaway I had. There was a lot
chippy. Yeah.
Yeah, around that time of the game. And then Winnipeg only took 2 penalties in that game as well too, so they're very disciplined. These are 2 disciplined teams going at it too. Right at the top in terms of penalties on the good side of that too, not the bad side. But yeah, it was the last game of the season. Neither team had anything to play for when it comes to the standings, and I think they're maybe looking ahead to their respective playoff games coming up.
That Bomber defense was sure opportunistic. I know statistically and everything, maybe they don't appear as dominant as the past couple of years, but Jefferson and Jeffcoat the bookends, and we've talked about Dietrich Nichols. Winston Rose can still make plays when they need him. Playmakers. Adam Bighill, our old friend, still very effective there at the age of 34, 35, wherever he is now. So this is great. Again, the two top teams in the division clearly are the last two standing. Sunday, 1:30 Pacific time, IG Field. It's going to be great. We'll talk about some X factors. We'll talk a little bit about the weather. The weather story sure doing its thing here. That's fun. That's part of it. That's playoff football. It's inevitable. But we'll talk to Farhan Lalji from TSN. We'll be on the sidelines on Sunday. Get Farhan's thoughts on the upcoming matchup. I know he has plenty of great insight to give as always. Farhan coming up first and now. All right, back on First and Now, and I'll tell you what, Nick, this is what, 32, 33 episodes we've done together?
It's number 32 this year.
32, okay. And we've finally cracked the code. We have gone through his people. We have arranged it. We've gone back and forth in terms of days and times, but he's here. Farhan Lalji from TSN joining us. He'll be there at IG Field. Farhan, welcome to the program.
Let's tell the truth first. This is the first time you've asked, so you're digging the bottom of the barrel after getting all the good guests, and you literally asked me today, and I said yes to the first time that you offered up. So come on, I couldn't be less maintenance if I tried.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
No, I could be telling you that I love the 49ers, and you'd buy it.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Yeah, let's save those guys for another day. But I'll tell you, well, here's the truth. We're glad we have you on this week of all weeks, because Nick and I just kind of hit on this in the opening segment we did. It's this Lions team certainly had some ups and downs in the second half of the year due to Nathan Rourke going down, chief among the reasons. But these are the two best teams in the West Division duking it out. Do you see it that way as well? How excited are you for this?
Yeah, it should be fun, right? I mean, and this is kind of a David and Goliath, right? On some levels, it feels like it did last year in the Grey Cup when, nobody was giving Hamilton a chance because of how good Winnipeg was. And quite frankly, the previous year in 2019, no one gave Winnipeg a chance because of how good Hamilton was. So we'll see if BC can pull off a similar upset to what Winnipeg did in 2019. But yeah, like when you look at the Lions, when Nathan Rourke is healthy and, this team is playing the way it can, these are the two best teams in the league. And I got a lot of respect for Calgary, and certainly Calgary looked very good in the last regular season game at BC Place where they wound up beating BC. But again, BC with Nathan Rourke is a different animal. And, it's not just the quarterback play, but it's the way he inspires everybody else. And he's not a rah-rah leader. It's not inspiring by doing it that way, but everybody else plays a little bit better because they know when he's in the game, they've got a chance, right? Receivers run harder because everybody's available. The defense knows eventually the offense is going to make the play that's needed. So I think everybody plays with that much more confidence, and I think it should be a fun game.
Obviously, you talked to him after the game. He did his thing in the media room as well. Clearly, he didn't look totally comfortable for the entire four quarters, but just kind of in closing with that result, your overall assessment of how he performed overall.
Yeah, really nothing to not like in his performance, right? Because you knew that the game in Winnipeg the previous week, I'm not going to say it was going through the motions, but you knew the goal and the exercise was different. Yes, he's competitive, but it was just knocked the rust off, right? So there still was a little bit of, I don't want to say apprehension, but you're just trying to figure it out early, right? And the first half of the game, I'm always one of those guys that doesn't need a million points to know that it was a good football game, right? And there was 19 points and only 275 yards. And it was a well-played football game. There were 19 first downs in that first half, and the teams moved the ball, and Nathan Rourke did a good job, and he did kind of what he's done previously in terms of, checking it down and just taking whatever the defense gives him, and I thought he was just fine. And, yeah, in the second quarter, I started to get a little bit nervous for him. You could see the limp getting a little bit stronger, more pronounced, and then he took those two late sacks in the second half, and you weren't sure what you were going to see. But the way he came out in the third and fourth quarter, I thought he was outstanding. I thought the run game was equally impressive, right? I mean, I think it's as good as I've seen all year against a really, really good opponent. So when you can get Nathan and couple it with a really good run game, wow, and that receiving core, we know how good they are. So I thought Nathan did as well as could be expected. Nobody could have expected more for him in his first full game back to go for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns and 22 of 30. It was pretty legendary stuff for a guy coming off that kind of injury.
And then something I enjoyed on the other side of the ball watching was the performance of the guys like Matthew Betts, Luchez Purifoy, the free agent signings that maybe were criticized at some points in the offseason, but now they've really paid dividends in these crucial moments. Talk about the play that the BC Lions defense against a strong opponent, and of course everyone was talking about the Calgary run, but the Calgary still brought it on offense too.
Yeah, both those names are interesting to me. And I was one that was critical of Matthew Betts signing, not because they shouldn't have signed him. I just felt they overpaid him based on what he had done previously in Edmonton. And he earned the salary this year. There's no way around it. He might not have earned it the day he signed it, because generally you get signed for what you've done. It's very rare that somebody gets signed based on potential and then lives up to the contract, right? We're seeing that in hockey with the Canucks. JT Miller got signed for a 99-point season. We don't know if we're going to get close to that this year, whereas Matthew Betts got signed based on what he's doing now, and that's so rare. And on top of that, they didn't have the same level of D-line rotation, especially on the edges. Boom Guacham didn't play in the game. And one thing a lot of people don't realize is that when you are signing or when you are starting a Canadian quarterback, yeah, that sounds great for the ratio. But in terms of overall roster composition, the Lions don't get an extra American on the roster to make up for that, right? They lose a designated import, right? Because their extra DI is now starting. So, BC has one less DI than the rest of the teams do because of Nathan Rourke. And again, you take that in your ratio, it's a positive, but it does affect their ability to rotate, right? So now Matthew Betts is playing even more snaps and played really, really well. And as far as Luchez Purifoy is concerned, and back to Betts, that sack on Bo Levi Mitchell was massive because, they were starting to feel it, right? And everybody in the building could see a legendary story being authored that wasn't Nathan Rourke, that it was Bo Levi Mitchell coming back. So the Betts sack was as big a play as there was in this game. You talk about Pipkin to Hatcher and everything like that. That sack was incredibly important. And then Luchez Purifoy, when he first made the move to safety, and we were doing all the stories on the doll and everything like that, Pennywise, he was such a difference maker back there. But quite honestly, for the last month, I haven't noticed him. He has not been nearly as active, and I think it was eating on him a little bit to be playing farther from the ball as opposed to playing Sam, which I think is his preferred position. But in that game, you could tell he put everything aside. It was all about the team. It was all about the win. And not that it wasn't about the team. He's not a selfish player. I'm just saying he didn't have that juice for about a month that he had for 3 games when he first got the position. And now I saw that again in that game. So that was very, very much needed. And it's going to be again when you're facing a receiving core that, other than, they are as good as BC, right? Like when you take Dalton Schoen and Nick Dembski and everybody's healthy, Rasheed Bailey, like he's kind of getting it going. Ellingson's back. That receiving core is as good as BC's. They need Purifoy on his game.
And then looking ahead now to this Sunday, the stat I really looked on the July 9th game was that Winnipeg held the ball for 39 minutes in that game. And it's easier said than done, forcing takeaways against the Bombers. We've seen Collaros evade pressure all the time, but how do you keep that offense under wrap if you're Ryan Phillips?
You got to find a way to take the big play away from Schoen if you can, right? And I know everybody's going to talk about the run game, and I don't think Winnipeg will give in on the run game as early as Calgary did. We asked Dave Dickinson about it after the game. Nick, you were there, and he said that it wasn't, we did have runs called, but there were times where we either pulled the ball or checked out and did it differently because of what they were showing. Winnipeg's not going to care what BC shows. They're going to continue to attempt to run the ball and impose their will. But what I see was shown is that even if he makes 2 catches, they're like 2 catches for 120 yards. It's crazy. This guy's big play potential, even when you think you've got him under wraps. And can they contain Zach Collaros and keep him in the pocket? Because nobody's been able to do that. And once he gets the edge, everybody finds a way to get open and he can make a play for them. So I'm more concerned about that than I am Winnipeg's running game. And that might sound counterintuitive, and it underscores your point on time of possession. But quite frankly, take the turnovers and the time of possession away. What really killed BC was they got absolutely crucified on special teams, right? Janarian Grant scores. It was great field position all the time. It got to the point where BC was chip kicking just to prevent a return and saying, okay, Winnipeg, take the ball on your own 45. Like, that's how embarrassing, how one-sided BC special teams got manhandled in that game. And I thought they were going to get manhandled a bit against Calgary too, not to that degree, but they would lose decisively, even though they have been trending a little bit better. And I was impressed that the special teams didn't cost BC against Calgary. They didn't take those critical penalties. They didn't spend the game inside their own 20 with starting field position. And if they can do that again in this game, if they can keep Janneri and Grant under wraps and get net neutral with the special teams, I think that's huge, because the one thing with Nathan is that Nathan just keeps fighting. He keeps chopping wood. Despite the time of possession, despite the plays that are made, he's just in there. Give him a chance by not giving up freebies on special teams. And if you can do that, I think the Lions will have a chance late in the fourth quarter to pull something out here.
Yeah, field position, I'm with you. A very huge element to this one. And turning it around, you mentioned Winnipeg's running game. James Butler, 95 yards on 20 carries, I think it was. He was fighting through some ailments in the first half. He was getting looked at, was getting treatment at halftime right after he spoke to you going into the locker room, I think. And, it's going to be cold, Farhan. The line of scrimmage is obviously going to be huge. If the JB train can keep rolling here, how beneficial is that?
Yeah, I think it's huge, quite honestly. And I really, really like Calgary's front seven. I think their front seven might be the best in the league and better than Winnipeg's. And that's a strong statement, right? When you consider some of the pieces like Big Hill and Jeff Coat and Sales and obviously Willie Jefferson for Winnipeg. But truly, I think Calgary's front seven's better. And I was so impressed that BC was able to run the ball. If they can match that and do that against Winnipeg, I think it's a complete game changer, because they weren't able to do that earlier. And I just think BC's run game in the last 6 weeks has just continued to climb, just continued to get better against every team they've faced. And, again, like the Winnipeg game, that whole game was an asterisk as I saw it. But they've got to be leaving that game with an incredible amount of confidence, because in the second half, you knew BC was going to run the ball. Nathan was a little banged up, and then BC gets a 2-touchdown lead, and it's just logical to run the football. And they just kept doing it with an injured back. So the linemen and James Butler, they've all got to feel really good about how well they ran the ball. And that piece, I think they should feel that they're ready for the elements as a result.
We've talked about Winnipeg's receivers. We saw Wolotarski and Ellingson return there in that last game 2 weeks ago. But, a good story on this Lions squad, it has been the improved secondary. You talked about Luchez, but still earned an all-star nod, division all-star nod, we think. We're not sure if there's any more changes to the voting system coming, but Gary Peters, a career year pretty much for him. If you can contain Winnipeg and force them into second and long, for me, that matchup, the Lions' defensive backs against Winnipeg's receivers, is going to be very intriguing to watch.
Yeah, it really is, and they have the ability to do like what Malik Henry did on those first two passes from Bo Levi Mitchell, right? Like Marcus Sayles and TJ Lee were in incredible coverage, and he made the play. And BC is going to have to be that tight up on guys and find a way to make those plays against a very deep receiving core. And, I think Marcus Sayles and TJ Lee are going to be most important in this game, because I think that's where the matchups with Dalton Schoen are going to come. And look, I know Marcus Sayles got an all-star, but I probably wouldn't have had him in my top 3 DBs for BC. And that's not a shot. I think BC's got a good secondary. I think there were better players in the Lions secondary. I think there were times when teams tried to isolate Sayles and they had success against him. But I thought he played really, really well against Calgary, and he's going to need to pick up on that. Obviously, Winnipeg's his former team. He's going to be even much more motivated to go there and have a real good performance against them after they let him go. So they need the best of Marcus Sayles. They need Winnipeg version of Marcus Sayles to play in this game. And if he and TJ Lee can be on top of their games, then maybe they've got a chance to contain Dalton Schoen. But I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I really believe BC's receivers have an edge in the matchup against Winnipeg's secondary. But as far as the other way around, I don't know. I mean, Winnipeg's might. So we'll see. We'll see what BC's group can do, and if they can regenerate some turnovers, right? Because we haven't seen as many turnovers from them, right, against teams like Winnipeg and Calgary. We've seen it against other teams, and I know they got the 2 pick sixes against Winnipeg's backup. That's a little different than doing it against Zach Caleros.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say, too, that this year, compared to Winnipeg's past 2 championship runs, is that this year they could do it with their offense, whereas the past 2 seasons, it's been that dominant defense that's really carried them, or not carried them, but been the driving force to their championship caliber play. This season, a big difference in Winnipeg's roster that I'm looking at is kicker. because Justin Medlock had 6 field goals in that 2019 Grey Cup. Sergio Castillo, they traded for, he had 5 in that Grey Cup last year in 2021. And now they got Mark Leggio, and they're rolling with him for the rest of the season. And he's 7th in the CFL in field goal percentage. Do you think that's going to play a role this Sunday?
Yeah, it could. I mean, never say never in games like this, right? I mean, I do expect the Lions to play, as well as possible. I don't think they're going to lay an egg here in this game. I do believe they're going to be punching in the fourth quarter. So, it very well could come down to the leg. And I don't think Leggio's a liability. I know he had that one game earlier, and they were talking about potentially trying to replace him. And Mike O'Shea said, everybody pump the brakes a little bit. We're going to be just fine. And he rode with him. And look, do I think Sean White gives BC an edge in that? Yes. But I don't think Mark Leggio will be a liability when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. And how about the weather? We're hearing about the weather on social media. Like, let's get your take on this. Is that going to play a factor?
I'm not wearing flip-flops. I can assure you of that,
guys.
Oh,
come on.
There will be no slides on the sidelines from Farhan Lalji. I'm going to be wearing a few layers. I'll be wearing toe warmers. Will it be a factor? You know what? It's as much a factor as BC wants to let it be. Because truly, if BC has success early on in this game, they're not going to be thinking about the weather. When the weather's a factor? When you're losing, right? And the other team can impose their will, and they can start running the football, and they can do their things. Like, I talked to Zach Caleros at the end of the game last year in the Western Final. He was freezing his ass off, right? And he basically wanted to run off the field with me so I could jog with him, because it was cold, and he was cold. Everybody feels it. And you get these offensive linemen that come out before the game and they go without sleeves, and come on, man, like, stop. Everybody's cold, and you can do the mind over matter thing. But, when I coach kids, and it's the same with adults, I truly believe when you are losing, all the extraneous elements get felt. The crowd gets felt. The weather gets felt. Every hit feels harder. Everything is more painful. Stay in the game, and then you don't think about those things. So as long as it's a close game in the fourth quarter, the weather shouldn't be a factor. BC's run game is there. Nathan Rourke played in cold weather games in Ohio. I know this. We've had the discussion. He's had cold weather practices. It's not warm where he's from. So I think he can handle it. I think Burnham can handle it. I think most of these guys will be okay. Just have early success. Stay in the game going into the third quarter, and weather isn't going to be a factor in Winnipeg's favor at that point.
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the head. Every team is made up the same. Every team has guys who grew up in cold climates. Every team has players who are from Sunbelt states. The Lions are no different. Winnipeg's no different. Sure, they deal with it a bit more living there, but yeah, it's just one of those low-hanging fruit things. Oh, this is a dome team coming to play out in the elements. It's good talk. It'll get people talking, but hey, you mentioned the linemen coming out. So you at least do that. You're going to come out shirtless and show everyone how ready you are, Farhan. If you're not going to do flip-flops?
No, I won't be pulling the Adam Schefter the other day on Monday Night Football No, I am going to bring so many layers that I won't have any layers left for Regina the following week, right? Like, people are going to be like, it's not that bad here today. It's only minus 17. We're used to minus 40. Well, I'm used to like plus a lot. So I'm going to represent the West Coast proudly with as many layers as humanly possible. I will have earmuffs on. I will have gloves on. There's no pride here. And it's funny because when I coached right up until I was 50, no matter what the elements were, I wore shorts. Truly, like, we would go to Kamloops or Kelowna, and we would play cold weather games, at the end of October, beginning of November, where it was legitimately cold, and I wore shorts, and I just had it in my head that my adrenaline was going, and I don't feel cold. Like, my hands were cold, so I always wore gloves, but I wore shorts because generally I just didn't feel that cold. And then all of a sudden, like, I turned 50, and my mindset changed, and my wife was like, "Okay, have you grown up yet? Like, could you put some pants on?" And then I realized, maybe it is kind of cold. And then I started wearing pants even for coaching. So, yeah, there we go.
Your wife, Mary, certainly knows best.
She does.
That is indeed. Hey, listen, my friend, this was worth the wait. We won't wait another 35 weeks next time, I'm sure. Yeah. And, hey, we look forward to seeing you. We'll probably see you Saturday for media obligations and whatever activities go down at IG Field. Going to be fun.
Yeah, sadly, my son lost his playoff game 2 days ago. So I was planning to fly in Saturday night after his his championship game, but alas, we won't be in it. So I'm going to fly in Friday night because I want to spend an extra day in Winnipeg. But actually, I've got two of my former US players that are now playing both in the secondary for University of Manitoba, Sebastian
Nice.
Reed and Taryn Birdie. So I'm looking forward to connecting with them on Saturday. And Thursday, myself and Julio and a few of the other local media, we're going to all be on Twitter Spaces at 6:00. So join us for that. And if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you get on and listen in, and we can just talk about the remarkable turnaround of this franchise. You know, I said it on Twitter late in the game that it was so awesome to see everyone's hard work being paid off, right? Because we've seen, like, I go back, I remember when Murray Pesem was the owner, okay? And I remember one game, he did all this promotion, and he had like a wheelbarrow full of loonies to represent gold, and it was Louis Passaglia's weight in gold and all of this stuff. And, you know, he did all of this, and they had like a huge crowd for the game, and the team laid an egg. And we've seen so many of these big games where they drum up some excitement, and they get an uptick in the crowd, and the team lays an egg. Well, they didn't last week. And it was so great to see the organization and Mr. Doman and Rick Lawlisher and Dwayne Vanu and everybody, yourself, Nick, best social media team in the league, seeing all you guys get rewarded for all the hard work this year with that effort. And we'll talk about that along with breaking down the game and everything else. A few Winnipeg people, Doug Brown, Derek Taylor, a few of them are going to join us as well. So it should be fun on Thursday. So join us on Twitter Spaces at 6.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for the kind words. Certainly is fun times right now. And who knows, maybe we'll log on and have some fun Thursday night, yourself, Julio, and a cast of thousands, as you just said. Awesome. That's the beauty of content in this day and age. You can just log on to your device anytime, anywhere, and get great CFL and Lions insight. Farhan, thanks again, my friend.
All right, we'll see you in 32 episodes.
Yes, or less.
Well, we'll see you Saturday. Appreciate it, Farhan.
See you guys.
Farhan Lalji from TSN, legend in the BC high school football coaching ranks. Love Farhan, and always love getting his insights, joking that we finally got him on here after 30-plus episodes of doing this together. And you heard him talking about key players and key elements and key areas in which the Lions simply must be up to par or above par. We did this last week, and it worked out. We did our X Factors. I think I talked about bets. One of us talked about Burnham, and we have to do this again. We'll each go one X Factor on each side of the ball for the Lions here in Winnipeg.
Want to start with offense?
Go for it. You lead it.
This could be a chalk pick. It's not Nathan Rourke, but it's Dominique Grimes. For me, 1,400 yards this season. Probably the best jump ball winner in the CFL, and I think we're going to need one of those, or at least one of those, coming if we're going to come out victorious in this game. And he's proven that he can do it against the Bombers. He had 6 catches for 136 yards and a pair of touchdowns in that July 9 game. One of the only players who really came to play that night. Another big touchdown in that October 15th game. And then he's 6'4", he's 215 pounds. He can be bigger, stronger than these Winnipeg defensive backs, and he's got to be that bigger, stronger force out there in the Western Final.
Yeah, you saw it, 50-50 balls. You're going to take him more often than not. His emergence has been quite fascinating this year. We talked about it with Lucky Whitehead being down, how Alex Hollins comes in and picks things up quite nicely. Burnham, Whitehead, injuries were constant on this offense all season long, and Dominique Grimes has parlayed that into all those accolades you mentioned, 1,400 yards. So we're sticking with offense here, right? He ended up being one against Calgary, and given all of these elements that we're discussing for the West Final, have to go James Butler. Despite getting a little nicked up, I'm guessing he had some ankle issues, but 95 yards on 20 carries, just a couple of great downhill runs, not afraid of contact, yards after contact, which I love, especially this time of year. Again, have to say it's going to be chilly. The line of scrimmage, that's going to be the difference in the game here, Nick. Need another solid outing out of JB to be successful, I feel.
For sure. And then on defense, we've talked about how the turnovers this year, in the Winnipeg games, they played a big role. They were 4-0 in Winnipeg's favor in their win. They were 3-0 for BC in their win. Jordan Williams on defense, he's forced 3 fumbles. He's also recovered 2 this season, so he has a knack for punching the ball out. Probably going to need one of those if, again, we're going to come out victorious in this game. find a way to get the ball back on to our offense. And he's also someone he was fifth in the CFL this year with 89 tackles. So, and I feel like he didn't get the credit he really deserved, or the recognition at least, for being one of the league's best linebackers again this year off his most outstanding rookie season last year. But Jordan Williams, he's someone who, like I said, he finds a way to get that ball out, and he's going to need to make it happen on Sunday.
Yeah, sideline to sideline, very solid, very effective. And yeah, Ben Hladek healthy enough now that he's back to starting in the middle, and they kind of rotate Jordan Williams and Bo Lacumbo in and out at the will spot. Depth, very, very good this year for 2022. Defense, I'll have to go Gary Peters. We've talked about how Winnipeg's receiving core is at full strength. We think we saw Drew Wolotarski, Greg Ellingson both return in that final regular season game. Dalton Schoen, you can chisel him in for most outstanding rookie. He's winning that easily. I can't even remember who the Eastern nominee was, but Schoen's winning it. I'm that certain. So that entire secondary vastly improved. I think I agree with some analysis on CFL.ca that they go every position and say who has the edge. The Lions should have the edge in the secondary. Gary's a West Division All-Star, very durable, leads the team in interceptions, has not missed a game in 4 seasons as a BC Lion. Very impressive. So I'm going with Gary. That jersey switch to number 1 this year has suited him real well, and they're going to have to limit the deep ball and keep Winnipeg in second and long situations. That's where the secondary is going to come in on those second down plays. So Gary Peters for me.
Big time. You know I love me some Gary Peters, and while you can argue that maybe Dietrich Nichols is the best halfback in the CFL, I would say Gary Peters, you could argue, is the best cornerback in the CFL. So going to have some elite defensive backs on the field in the Western Final.
Yeah, playmakers everywhere, both sides of the ball. This has been fun, and I couldn't sit still today. I couldn't sit down at my desk. I'm walking around in the hallways. Dwayne Vinot, our COO incoming president, says, "Matt, you're pacing around. What's going on?" It's like, well, Dwayne, I'm ready to roll here. Let's go.
Yeah. This is it.
We're recording this on a Tuesday. We don't fly out for 72 hours. I don't think I can wait that long, Nick, but it's going to be special. Winnipeg, always fun this time of year. And yeah, let's enjoy this because you never know how often these opportunities come around. I mean, my first year with this club in 2016, beat Winnipeg in a thrilling semifinal, and got it taken to us the following week in Calgary in the West Final. And it's okay, this team will be back. Took 6 years, 5 seasons, 6 years to get back. So I think this team has a little bit more upside than that 2016 team. I can safely say that now. But
yeah,
buckle up, man. This is going to be good.
Yeah, the quarterback matchup too. I can't get enough of it. It's the CFL's dream. It has to be. Behind closed doors, Nathan Rourke versus Zach Collaros. That's the wish everybody wanted. That's what everybody wants to see in this big moment game. Collaros has been there, done that with the Grey Cups. Nathan Rourke's just up and comer, building his legacy. So it's just those two going head to head is going to be an awesome showdown.
Yeah, it's like last week when we were going through all the categories with Calgary, and it's like these. Yeah, but once again, right? I'll take it a step further. The best 3 teams in the league easily were Winnipeg, BC, and Calgary, and 2 of them are left standing here. So 1:30 Sunday, Moj, Julio have all the action. 12:30 pregame on AM 730, Lions Audio Network. And we have it all covered. BCLions.com will be covering the heck out of this as we always do, starting on Wednesday with the official return to practice. Saturday content from IG Field. Sunday, it's on. Pack the light winter clothing. It's going to be good. First and Now is on Twitter, at First and Now. I'm at BakesTakes84. He is at Nick_Kowalski. Nick with a K. Kowalski the regular way. And we'll do this next week. Hopefully it'll be a happy version.
Yeah, right before Regina.
Right before Regina. First and Now is the official Lions podcast.